arguments and protests about patriarchy and male domination in society is about the physical structure and how women are perceived. So Philomena's study is arguing that African feminism is not like that African feminism looks at women first and foremost as individuals, as humans, and that it doesn't look at women from the sexual point of view. That's one. Two, you find that there's so many definitions when we're talking about African feminism, but I have tried to limit those definitions to just two. In your private reading, it's possible for you to see some other definitions, but I'm leaning on these two definitions for many reasons. One of the reasons is that the definition given by Chioma study seems to encapsulate what African feminism is all about. It seems, to show what African feminism is all about, and which is it is a theory that combines just not that theory talks about race, class, and so on. The other definition has to do with the one by Tamari Kitosa. And he says that African feminism as a framework presents a critical interpretative frame through which to reconstruct the presence of African women in history. And as such, it offers a conceptual framework through which to criticize white hegemonic feminism. Feminism, as you will understand, tries, to talk about what Western feminism deals with most times is to say that to criticize men, and in their criticism of men, they are only talking about themselves. The theory is mainly about white women. It is not talking about other women. And other women are often portrayed as less women. Most times when they are portraying other women, they portray them as women that needs help. They're women that needs to be rescued. That's the way they portray other women. And so Tamari Kitosa is saying that African feminism comes in to debunk all those stories about incapability of African women and so on and so forth. So that's what Tamari Kitosa, he's saying. So when we were discussing Western feminism, we said that it has different schools, and we enumerated those schools, about 8 of them. African feminism also has different schools within it. But before I talk about those different schools, I would like to veer off and talk about certain arguments in African feminism, which most times, it's saying that you find many scholars saying that feminism is alien to Africa. They see feminism as coming from outside, and as it is eroding Africa. So, of course, when people put up such arguments, there are also people who say, no, this argument cannot be true. That this argument cannot be true. Does that mean that African women have been folding their arms and looking at what has been happening to their lives? But we know that that's not true. We've heard of Aba Women's Riot, or I rather prefer to call it Aba Women's War. We've heard about the Lagos Market women. We've heard about Kenya women. We've heard about South African women. No, and we've seen women being part of armed struggles in Mozambique, in Namibia. So, and then we've heard about how a certain king abdicated the throne because women kicked against him. So when we have all those, it's but meet that the discussion that African women, are not capable of being feminists, it's a fallacy. It's false. Because even when we don't use the word feminism, there are certain actions that shows that women are against perceived injustice, and so because of that, we need to be clear that women in Africa are feminists. They don't need to use the word, but they are feminists. The second thing is that those who say that feminism is against our culture, tradition, and history. And then you begin to ask, because culture is not static. Culture is not static. Culture is dynamic. So those who say that it is against our culture, tradition, and history, they are living in an El Dorado, because they must have heard about Efusheto Aniwura. They must have heard about Madam Tinubu. They must have heard about Moremi Ajasoro. They must have heard of Impi of Igala. So all these women rose up to certain occasions, in order to save society. So this issue that certain things are not part of us, most times does show that at times those who say such things, they don't really know what they're saying, that, they themselves are not sure of what they're saying. Now, when we talk about African feminism, I said we have two schools of feminism. The first school is what we call womanism. They do not want to use the word feminism, so they use the word womanism. But the womanism
Ma, we can't hear you.
that is being talked about by African women is in Africa by African Americans in the US, because in the US there is a type of womanism, but the womanism that African feminists are talking is different, because the womanism that the African American people were talking about has to do with lesbianism. And we have Alice Walker being, the proponent of that. That's not the womanism that African feminists are talking about. African feminists celebrate marriage, celebrate motherhood, celebrate the femininity of women, but argues too, like their femininity, their culture, their class, and their color should not be the determinant of oppression. So having said that, I just want to wait for some time and see if we have questions. Do we have questions? Do we have questions? Okay, if we don't have questions, I go ahead to discuss the constructions, the contributions of feminism to gender. Because there is a certain contributions that we've had as a result of feminism. Like I said, gender is not a legal terminology. Gender is a sociological construct, but in which law have seen that it's a useful tool to be able to address some issues. So I will now go over these various schools again and show their contributions to gender. So I start with the liberal feminist. The liberal feminist position, as we discussed yesterday, is that the differences between man and woman should not be based on biology. That we have a shared humanity, and that shared humanity is what should propel us in whatever we're doing. Liberal feminists believe that if men and women have equal opportunities in education or work opportunities, that the world will be a better place. And they are saying that equality of rights, under the law should not be denied on account of sex. So liberal feminists have shown modern society that it discriminates against women. And the good thing about what liberal feminists have done is that they were helped in breaking the glass ceiling. So today, we have women in every profession that men has been. This was not the case in years gone by. So that's their contribution to gender. Now, what is the contribution of the socialist or Marxian feminist? The main contribution is to see that women's work is work. Because initially, women's work is not seen as work. Women's work is not seen as work. The work you do at home is not seen as work. You know, taking care of children, and so it's not seen as work, you know. And what they are propounding, you know, is that the work that housewives do, you know, should be remunerated. And that women who stay at home and who are dependent on their husbands, you know, should not be discriminated against, you know, and that some of these policies are what makes women to be what they are not, you know, and that because women stay at home, take care of children, you know, they should be paid. And this position that they have taken has helped. So you now find that in divorce matters, you find, for those of you who will be doing family law, you will see that in divorce matters, that women can have a share of the property, you know, unlike before when the woman may not have anything. Radical feminists, their main contribution is the word patriarchy. They look at the society and they say that, look, the dominant features of the society has to do with patriarchy. And they are saying that that we need a society that is non-hierarchical and that is supportive, and that the society should temper down on the valorization of men. You know, we'll still come back to that when we're discussing lesbian feminism. So the radical feminist says that there's a universal gender oppression, that gender oppression is just not only in the Western world, that it is in everywhere that we have humans, that there's gender oppression, and that's what obtains in those places. And so their main contribution is that we should create a free, non-sexist society. That is the main contribution of radical feminists. Then we go to cultural feminist. Cultural feminism is a woman-centered perspective. That's it. Cultural feminism is a woman-centered perspective. And as I said yesterday, they celebrate women, they celebrate femininity, and so they say that women, you know, are what should be celebrated. And then their own main contribution lies in the fact that we can have a gender-blind neutralism and a work-oriented culture. What does that mean? They said that there are gender roles in the society, that is the role men perform is different from the role women perform. That's the way society has structured. But we can have a gender-blind neutralism. We cannot, be dependent on that. We cannot insist on that alone. We could have a gender-neutral, way of doing things in the society. Then we go to postmodern. Of course, you know that postmodern kicks against absolute truths. They kick against ground theories, and so for them, they are saying that there's no absolute truth and that there's no absolute objectivity. And so because there's no absolute truth and absolute objectivity, they are saying that gender should be fluid. Gender should not be pinned, at a particular and say, this is just a particular. No, that gender should not be pinned. So in essence, what they are saying is what I call loose values. No firm ideology. In other words, there are more contradictions, because there is no absolute truth and there is no objectivity and there is no neutrality. So what are they saying? Their own contribution to gender is about that there is no grand theory and they have loose values. Of course, lesbian feminists, what are they saying? They are saying their own contribution to gender is that women don't need men, that women can stay alone without men, that women can love other women, and that women should stop sleeping with men because men are the enemy. Of course, many folks will not agree with those assertions, but what lesbian feminists are doing is promoting the female gender. They're saying that for so long, it is the male gender that is being promoted, and now they want the female gender to be promoted. Then, when we go to African feminism, what is African feminism's contribution to gender? The African feminism contribution to gender lies in its emphasis on the humanity of man in the generic sense. They are talking about humanity of man, that is men and women. Well, we're human beings, and they engage with patriarchy that dehumanizes women and portray her as second-class citizens. And one thing that we should note is that African feminism comes from a background of cultural and historical experiences and advances the complementarity of male and female gender. African feminism is not against men. African feminism argues that there is a complementarity between men and women. African feminism sees men and women as victims of society, that it is the society that constitutes our socialization and worldview. So in other words, we are all victims of society. Black feminism, of course, is a critique of mainstream feminism, and it's a standpoint theory, and its analysis is based on power and knowledge. And of course, it looks at color as a determinant, when we're talking about sex, class. It looks at that in some hierarchy, white women will fare better, but Black women will not fare. The way Black feminism talks is also the way Chicana feminism talks. They also are talking about how, women have been dehumanized in those societies. And why? Because they look at it from the prism of color, and they say that, look, everything that is being done, women whose skin color are not Black, they fare better than women whose skin color are Black. So we look at Black feminism and Chicana feminism as color feminism. Chicana feminism will be said to be brown feminism, because it is mainly from women from Latin America countries, that are into it, and that they say that, look, that life has not been what is expected to be because of our color. So on this note, I have concluded our lecture, our first lecture, and the topics that are beneath it. I will now call for questions. I will now call for questions. So the floor is open for us to ask our questions.
Good afternoon, ma.
Good afternoon.
Yes, ma, you earlier stated that there are two schools of African feminism, but you only mentioned womanism.
Oh, okay. The other school, sorry, it escaped me. The other school is what is called Stiwanism. Stiwanism. And that is the contribution of Professor Omolara Ogundipe Leslie. She also does not want to talk about feminism, and because it seems that the word feminism is combative, and it seems that a lot of people do not want to hear anything about it. And so because of that, we talk about Stiwanism, which is feminism that deals with women's transformation in Africa. That's what it is talking about. It's talking about women that, and what Stiwanism is all about is that it's promoting women. It's promoting women. So one of the Stiwanism, as propounded by Omolara Ogundipe Leslie, she says that feminism in Africa is based on 8 things. And I'm going to reel out those 8 things to us now. She says, feminism is not a cry for a kind of sexual orientation. Sexual practice in Africa tends to be private and is considered private. So she's saying that women in Africa are feminists not because of their sexual orientation, because our sexuality is private, is not in the public domain. And then she said, feminism is not the reversal of gender roles. Gender being defined simply as socially constructed roles. She also says that feminism is not penis envy, wanting to be a man, as men like to say to us. That African feminists are not saying they want to be like men. That's not what they're saying. They are comfortable in their skin. They are comfortable being women. Then she says feminism is not necessarily opposition not to men, It argues that a woman's body is an inherent property. Feminism is not opposition. So African feminists are not opposing men. No, that's not what they're doing. And then she said feminism is not dividing the genders. She also said that feminism is not paroxysm of Western women's rhetoric. Because when we're talking about feminism, some people will say, oh, we want to be like the West. No, that's not what we want to be like. And then she said, African feminism is not opposed to African culture and heritage. No, African feminism is not opposed to African culture and heritage, but argues that culture is dynamically evolving and certainly not static. That culture should not be immobilized in time. Because at times when we talk, they'll say it's against our culture. And people begin to, it is not in our culture to ride cars, but we're riding cars. So what did we do differently? The feminism is not a choice between extreme poverty on the one hand and hateful separation from men on the other. So that's what Professor Omolara Ogundipe Leslie is saying, So I hope I have answered your question.
I have a question.
Yes.
The last point you made about is not a choice between extreme poverty and war against men. I don't really understand it.
You understand what poverty is?
Yes, I do.
Women are the face of poverty. And so African feminists are saying, and of the Stiwanis brand are saying that we are not making a choice, between poverty and hateful separation from men. We're not separating ourselves from men, and we're not also taking poverty. We're not doing that. That's what she's saying. So any other question?
Yes, ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, ma'am. So, what can we say is the major difference between since there are two branches of African feminism, is there any major difference between womanism and Tewanism?
Hey, well, they may be saying the same thing, but there is an emphasis. Womanism by Chikenye Ogunyemi rejects lesbian love totally as an African feminist issue. Ogundipe Leslie, he's silent on that, but at least she has also said that African feminism is not paroxysm of Western women's rhetoric, So am I understood now? Yes, Paul.
Yes.
Paul, ask your question. Paul Ugochukwu, ask your question.
Oh, hello, ma, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, I didn't understand what you meant when you said about cultural feminism, that their main contribution is a gender neutral or gender blind neutrality. I don't understand what you mean by that, what that means. So
I also don't understand the question. You said you don't understand.
Yeah, what you meant by gender blind neutrality, like what is that supposed to look like? Like, I don't.
Well, cultural feminists, they talk about femininity, they talk about celebration of women, and they say that the society is the one that has demarcated, given us our roles, saying that men should go and provide, women should take care of the home. So they're now saying that we can have a gender neutral perspective to issues, that we cannot always say that this is it. You know, we can blur and we can crisscross, and we can, that advocacy has helped, as I said, in breaking glass ceilings. Women are now in professions that they were not in before. Women are now soldiers, are even combatants, unlike before when they were in service, they were in service session, they were not combatants. We now have women combatants, we now have women pilots, and so on, and so aeronautical engineers, and so on and so forth. That's what they're saying, that the society can be gender blind, they can be gender neutral.
Okay, ma. Thank you, ma.
Okay. Muchidat, you're still raising your hand.
Yes, ma'am. I have another question, ma'am.
So what's the question?
Yes, I do get the gender contribution of the black feminism. I just got the idea, like their perspective. I didn't really get their own contribution regarding gender.
But it was the Black feminists that brought not just the issue of sex, that is, that you're a woman, but the issue of color to gender issues. That was, and they brought attention to the fact that if you want to help women, you have to help the Black women, because you have to take cognizance of color. So that's their main contribution.
Okay, I understand, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have other questions? We still have a couple of time. So Samuel, ask your questions.
Okay, ma. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, ma. My question is, I want to know, how can we say, or do we say that the pre-gender revolutions, how do they impact our knowledge of gender and the law and the current time? Because I'm trying to, just oppose let me just use the oppression of women, or let me say the sexes, before the observation or the rise of different theories and evolutions of gender and the law and the current state of. So how do they impact gender and the law at the current time?
Please, can you take that question again?
Okay. I mean, we've gone through a number of the theories and of course the different schools of thoughts which gave rise to the awareness about the oppression of women and the global village on the world entirely. So I want to know, how do these theories really impact our current world? Because if we check, like you rightly said, that currently we can say that women this time around, they also engage in the same men-related roles. Women are soldiers, women are doctors, women are lecturers, women are, in fact, some women are husbands these days. Why men also assume the role of being a wife? So how do we say that in this our current world, that the pre-gender revolutions really impact our knowledge of the law and gender in our own time?
Well, it depends on your ideological construct or your ideological bent. If you speak to people on the field, they're likely to tell you that there's been great improvement concerning women. You know, that when you look at women issues, there have been a lot of improvement. While we may agree that there have been a lot of improvement, but we also say there's still many land to be possessed. And the world has not been standing still. They've been responding to some of the issues that women, complain about. For example, when you look at the Nigerian police law, a female police officer, if she wants to marry, she must write the IGP, and the IGP must agree to the person she wants to marry. And that's not the case for a policeman. So that policy or that law has been challenged. Before, there were no women combatants, but we now have women combatants, So we find a lot of demystification going on. We find a lot of, so what society has really held, and feel that, look, without this, the society will not move ahead. We're beginning to see that those things are gradually being eroded. Maybe your question really is, issues are not being responded to as fast as it should. There's no doubt about that, that issues are not being responded to, as fast, But what we also will say in that is that we will continue to fight, and demand. And as we continue to fight and demand, then we will have what we desire. Am I well understood?
Yes,
Am I
ma'am.
well understood?
But
Okay, but
yes,
what?
ma'am. I really want to make some clarifications too.
Okay.
Thinking about this question, something will just appear appealing to my senses. With the wave, especially the second wave in gender and the law, or about women inclusion or inclusivity in the affairs of the society. As a kind of decolonization from patriarchal system. Now, I think and really think that it would be wiser if that the law or the main purpose or the aim of gender and the law isn't really focal or that centrally focuses on the women, because it might really get to a time whereby maybe the male folks may want to start up their own theories, or a kind of a way of, because if you see, there are issues, emerging issues also in the society whereby even the men in a way are being downsided by the opposite foes, or let me say from the biological conception of sexes. Instead, we can try to truncate some of these theories or some of these evolutions or let me say the feminism movement, whether the liberal feminism, especially the lesbian feminism, because let's say that also the African feminism or the African way of life in a way rejects totally the lesbian feminism. So we should, kind of try to truncate some of these things and really focus mainly on the emerging or the postmodern conceptions or the arising issues in this time. Because trying to put our mind or backdate our mind on what happened before these emerging issues, although the world, it evolves. Tomorrow, we never know what that may happen. So that we try to just oppose. Though I know that the past, or let me say, what happened before is also necessary or needed to, forecast the future. But we should really try to put away our mind a bit, kind of drift a bit from, all these focuses on the women. Because if we do it this way, it may really want to even go away from the approaches and the biological approach, the psychological approach, and of course the sociological approach of gender. So that even this class, the class we've been having about 3 classes now, it may in a way sociologically or even psychologically put some of us that have the sexes of what the male to start in a way, okay, start thinking in the line or in the way of, being, to extremely value more of the female roles in the society. So I
Okay.
just want to say that there can be a balance so that this side and this side would really know that truly this is gender, and as gender roles, we can find our own balances there. So that is even why I asked that question. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Well taken. And I also hope your colleagues are also listening, and they will find your thoughts very useful. So do we have other questions? We still have time. I like to do short lecture because we are not seeing ourselves, and then give room, for questions. With that, I think I will be able to solve more issues and pass more issues that we need, to rub our minds with. Yes, Mujidat, do you still want to ask questions, or is the question that you asked before?
No, I have no questions. I raised my
Okay.
hand already.
Okay. Anyone, I'm waiting for us to ask more questions. We have 35 more minutes to the end of the class. So I want us to, so any question? Any question? I would love to hear our question. Yes, Eniola, go ahead.
All right, Mark. So, good afternoon, Mark. The question
Good
I have
afternoon.
is relating to, okay, over time, we've been discussing about the different scopes of feminism and the likes and everything. And we've understood from your explanation that some of these different types, although the bedrock is about women fighting for women, celebrating women, you get some of these types are still conflicting, even each other. You spoke about the let me use the example. Okay, the cultural feminists just want to celebrate women. They really just want to be celebrated for who they are and what they possess and the likes. And the radical feminists are really agitating about the pain women have gone through, and they want to step up and really take their position, what they feel is their position. The lesbian feminists, don't even see the need for men. They feel that, oh, since their affection does not lie towards the other sex or anything, they are independent. So in although there are different branches, there are different scopes, there's still one underlying issue of, okay, promoting women values, making women voice stand out and all. But even if the root of feminism itself is can be drawn out, these different branches, these different types of feminism, if they are in itself conflicting in some kind of way, how then is the goal of feminism going to be achieved? That's my question. If, okay, from the bedrock we know that, okay, this they are is still the same, more or less, they are looking for the good, let me just use that word, the good of women in general. But in the expression of this, we have seen different schools of thought, we've seen different branches and scopes coming out, and in their expression, they're kind of conflicting. Because if the cultural school is saying, oh, we are really not concerned about the men can do what they are doing, we just want to be celebrated for who they are. And the radical people are coming out to say, you know what, no, we don't want the men to keep doing what they're doing because they are suppressing us, they are doing this, they are doing that. So we want to be known, we want to put ourselves out there. And the lesbians are saying, you know what, get rid of all the men and all those kind of things. So how then is, if their thoughts are conflicting, how then is the goal of feminism supposed to be achieved? That's my question.
Okay, the goal of feminism is equality of men and women. So it does not matter what the lesbians are saying or what the radicals are saying or what the postmodern or cultural or African feminists are saying. The goal is equal opportunity, that men and women, because they are humans, they should have equal opportunity. And the fact that I'm a woman should not debar me from having access to certain goodies in the society. That is what it is all about. So not minding all those contradictions, the goal is equal opportunity, equality of men and women, irrespective of their sex. Yes, Favor.
Thank you, Ma. I have a question. Between African feminism and Chicana feminism, aside from the fact that they have different origins, do they say different things? Do they have any core difference? Or is it just the
Yes,
African feminism?
African feminism is built on African philosophy and cultural outlook. Chicana feminism is a reaction to Western feminism in North America. And just like Black feminism, they're saying that, oh, it's not only Black women that are being discriminated against, even brown women are being discriminated against. You had Trump saying that Latin American people are eating their cats and dogs. So these are the issues, you know. So there's a difference between African feminism and Chicana.
Ma, I'm so sorry. I actually made a mistake in my question. I meant Black feminism and Chicana feminism.
Black feminists had African American women. Their experience is different from African feminism. In Africa, women are not discriminated against on the grounds of color, but they're discriminated against on the grounds of sex, of class, of religion, and ethnicity. For those people, they are discriminated on the grounds of sex, color, class, and anything. But color is not part of our own problem in Africa. Nobody discriminates against you because you are Black in Africa. You will be discriminated against because of where you come from, not because of your color.
No, Black feminism and Chicana feminism.
Favor, you are bringing me back. I have explained that over and over again. It's either you were not listening. Both are the same. Both are complaining against racial discrimination compounded with sex. Black feminism, they are Black women. Chicana feminism are brown women, but they are in North America. That's what they have in common. Yes, Boluwatife.
Good afternoon, Ma. Please, Ma, I did not get the authorities you gave for the two definitions, Ma.
One was Philoma Chioma Steady, and the other one is Tamari Kitosa.
Thank you, Ma.
Okay. Any other question? Any other question? Do we have other questions? Yes, Olorunyomi. Yes, Olorunyomi, you have the floor. Olorunyomi, you have the floor. Hello? Olorunyomi, you have the floor. Olorunyomi, I'm listening to your question. Do we have questions or we've run out of questions? Okay, if we don't have questions, I just want to do a recap of the lectures and then close up. Today we talked about African feminism and we looked at what is African feminism. It's a continuation of the lectures that we had yesterday. And we discussed the two schools, which are womanism and Stiwanism. And we discussed the difference between African feminism and Western feminism. We moved from that to have a discussion on the contributions of feminism to the concept of gender. And we started with liberal feminists. And we said that the main contribution of liberal feminists lies in the issue of equal opportunity, devoid of sex. And they have been able to crack the glass ceiling and blast it off. And that women are now in professions that normally they were not before. And then we talked about social feminism, and we said that they, in their own case, what they were able to do for us is to make the society to appreciate women's work and to say that the work that women do are unpaid and that those work needs to be recognized, that the work that they do should be recognized. And then we talk about radical feminists, and radical feminists are saying that we need a society that is non-hierarchical. That's the society we need. We need a society that does not valorize men. We need a society in which all of us are equal, and we need a society that, certain things are taken for granted because of our humanity. And they say that all over the world that women are oppressed, that the issue of oppression is universal and is not limited to just one society. And then we talked about cultural feminists, whose distinct contribution is in the appreciation of female bodies and life experiences. And that for them, we need a society that is gender blind or neutral. That yes, we have sex. Sex makes us man and woman. But that what we need to do, even though sex makes us man and woman, but that what we need to do really is that we need to be gender neutral, and we need to work towards appreciating our humanity. And when we look at the postmodern feminist, of course, says that there is no ground theory, says that there is no absolute truth, and that there is no objectivity. So what they are saying, in my term, is that they are loose values. But what they're saying really is that we cannot take the perspective of one person or a group of persons and make it our perspective, because knowledge is not objective or neutral. Lesbian feminists, in their own case, saying that, look, let's celebrate women. Let's make sure that men are not the center of attraction. And they say that women should stop sleeping with men, because they, lesbian feminists, see men as enemies. African feminism does not see men as enemies, but African feminist contribution lies in African philosophy, and in the sense that there is humanity of men and women. And because there is humanity of men and women, then we should desist from things or practices that makes women dehumanized. Black feminism and Chicana feminism are feminists rooted in the global North, and they stride color, sex, and the Black feminists, they are coming from the historical oppression of the Black race, especially the Black women. And Chicana feminists are also coming from the historical oppression of brown women. So there they meet. but they both are advocating that color should not be the determinant, or sex should not be the determinant in that society, that every one of us should be accepted on the basis of humanity. So with that, we've concluded the lecture. And in topic 1 of our course outline, which is definition of law and gender, evolution of feminist jurisprudence, evolution of gender and its contributions to feminist jurisprudence. With that, we've concluded that lecture, and next week, by the grace of God, we'll go on to the theories of sexuality, government regulation of sexuality and gender, including sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So in the absence of any question, we call it a day, and we meet again next Monday.